Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk About Colombia. As a quick rundown, Colombia has a very interesting position in the world. It is placed in the equator, which means we don't have seasons. We have meteor seasons. It touches both Atlantic and Pacific, and it has also La Cordillera de los Andes. The country is also known for the water resources. The main division of the country is in regions, regiones. There are 5 regions, 6 if you want to count the islands separately. La Región Caribe, Pacifica, Andina, Orinoquia, y Amazonia. There is a further division of the country in what is known as departamentos. Each region is divided into various departments. All of these departamentos have a capital. Today I wanted to talk about mainly the coastline of Colombia, which touches La Región Caribe and the Pacific. But let's start with the Región Caribe, which has 8 departments. This region is particularly known for the biodiversity. This is a great region to start and to notice a lot of the themes and typical things of Colombia. This region you can find the coastline, a desert, and the snow mountain, which creates a lot of different climates. The first department is Atlántico. The capital is Barranquilla, particularly known for the tourism. Barranquilla is also one of the main ports of the country. In particularly, it is known for the Carnaval de Barranquilla, one of the biggest ones in the world, even recognized by UNESCO. Bolívar has as capital Cartagena de Indias. This is a very important port not only for tourism but also because of the history of the country. In this area there is a festival in San Jacinto called Festival de Gaitas. The gaita is a particular instrument who has a very particular sound that I think once you hear you can kind of find out in many songs that are typical from Colombia. Also, this area of Bolívar introduces one of the main things about the country that I already mentioned, which is the biodiversity. Here you can find a lot of parks and sanctuaries whose main purpose is to protect the flora and fauna of the country. Some of these areas are close by, however, some of them are open for tourism. As per usual, it's always important to inform yourself about the places that you can and maybe shouldn't visit. Next one we have Cesar, whose capital is Valledupar. In this one there's also a festival called Festival de la Leyenda Vallenata. The vallenato is a very typical music from Colombia that uses an instrument called accordion. And in this festival the main point is to find the best player of accordion. Also in this area we introduce one of the most important indigenous groups of Colombia, which is the Arhuacos. There are many indigenous groups in the country, however some are a little bit more recognized than others. Arhuacos are absolutely one of those. Next one you have Cordova, whose capital is Monteria. Now if you're aware of European geography a little bit, then you can start to notice that there might be some names that you can find in Colombia and in South America in general, as well as in Europe. One of the reasons why sometimes when you Google things you need to be a little bit more precise. Next one you have the most northern part of the country, which is La Guajira, whose capital is Riohacha, also particularly known for the parks. And here we find another indigenous group, the Wayuu. This is also a very important zone for the extraction of carbon. Then we have Magdalena, whose capital is Santa Marta. For the name, I wanted to show you that it is connected with this one of the longest rivers that we have in Colombia, which is El Río Magdalena. There's also a festivity called Fiestas del Mar, which celebrates the anniversary of the capital, so Santa Marta. During this festival you have things like art, culture, as well as sports. And also the Reinado del Mar, to find the most beautiful woman in the land. Also important to note that here is where you can find La Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. This is a very important mountain because it is part of the Andes, however it is separately enough that it is independent, but it is part of the Andes, which creates a very interesting position because it allows for more biodiversity. From the very top, Sierra Nevada means that it is snowy, all the way down to the coastline. Next we have Sucre, whose capital is Sincelejo. Here we celebrate las fiestas del 20 de enero, where you have corralejas, you also have a reinado, and I suppose that at this point it is very clear to know that we in Colombia have a lot of festivities. We like to party, what can I say? And last but certainly not least, there are the islands. Now I'm just gonna draw one, which is the main one, which is San Andrés. However, the full name is Archipiélago de San Andrés, Providencia y Santa Catalina. This is a conglomerate of islands. And it is also a free port, which also allows for a lot of tourism. And as you can know, this is one of the regions that is mainly known for the tourism, so it is also very important for the economy of the country. Now here's the thing, if I place the map of the regions over the departments, you can start to see that there are a few parts that are not exactly inside of the region. This happens with absolutely all of the other ones. You can already see it, and you will notice it also when we go further to the other regions. And it is mainly because these divisions, the point of them is not exactly be geographically accurate as much as cultural, and just to take certain things into consideration. As you can see already, the Región Andina really has the Andes, while the Caribe takes more the side of the coast. But let's rewind a little bit, pointing out also where the capitals are. Let's go from the top. The northern part, Guajira, whose capital is Riohacha. Then we have Cesar, whose capital is Valledupar. This doesn't touch Venezuela, though. Then you have Magdalena, whose capital is Santa Marta. You have that little bit piece of there that is the Atlántico, whose capital is Barranquilla. Then we go down to Bolívar, whose capital is Cartagena de Indias. Then you have Sucre, whose capital is Sincelejo. And last but certainly not least, we have Cordova, whose capital is Montería. Once again, this is not just for you to remember it. I probably am not gonna remember this, I'm reading it out. But you know, it is important just to have a general idea of where these places are placed. Now let's talk a little bit more about this region. Now this is a very important region because, like I said, it is geographically speaking very interesting, and the biodiversity allows for a lot of different animals as well as plants as well as food, and particular things about the cultures that you can find. You can note that this is the zone that basically touches with other places that are up in the Caribbean Sea, so a lot of Central America. But this is also one of the main ports, especially Cartagena, during the slave trade, because this is the zone, this is the coastline where the Spanish arrived. Now when they arrived, they actually found, like I already said, a lot of indigenous groups. We already talked about the Arahuacos and the Wayúus, but you can also find the Taironas, the Kogi, the Zenú. Many of these indigenous groups own some of these lands. And it is important, not only as a Colombian but as a citizen of the world, to always remember to respect those spaces. But putting it all together, you can understand how you have the indigenous groups, you have the slave trade that arrives there, and then of course they go all the way down the country, and of course the colonizers. Not only the Spanish but also the Portuguese, as well as some French. All this creates one of the main things about Colombia, which is the ethnic diversity. This ethnic diversity, it is then seen in the culture. You can see it also in the clothes. For example, in certain zones, overall the clothes need to be very free and open because it is hot. However, you have in certain zones like Cartagena, where the typical attire is also very colorful, and you also find what is known as a sombrero volteado. However, when you go in the zones when you find the indigenous groups, they dress in their own way. And you find one thing that is very useful for us, which is la mochila, which is a bag basically. But they do it by hand, and it is really pretty, as well as very strong. You can know the ethnic diversity in one of the things that is part of our country and our culture, which is the music. Now this could require a whole video, so I'm gonna try to make it simple. Some of the main music that we listen to, and some of it that comes from this area, is mapalé. Mapalé has African origins, and it used to be a dance that workers used to do after work. It was very energetic, and it used to be played with tamburos and maracas. There was a lot of also introduction of the term brujeria, because when you see one of these dances, they has so much energy and it's so funny, it really gets into your body. So this very energetic type of dancing, people felt that it was because someone was taken by some sort of spirit. However, I love it, I think it is fun, it is beautiful, I highly recommend you to search some of it. Then you have cumbia. Cumbia could be defined one of the main types of music in the country, and it is the main rendition of the diversity of the country. This is because this has a complete connection of European, African and indigenous mix. Once again, this could require a whole dissertation in regards to how and why, but for the sake of this video, I just have to say that I love it. One of the main songs that it is known is called Pollera Colorada. Now, pollera, it refers to the skirt. Basically, that long, flowy skirt that when you're dancing, it moves in a very particular way. And colorada means colorful. Now, cumbia is usually danced in couples. While the mapalé is very wild and you get, crazy with it, la cumbia has a bit more of a firm type of dancing. In particular, the women have very stern and controlled movements, while the men kind of follow a little bit more freely. And the whole point of the dance is to kind of show courtship. Now, then you have vallenato, which I already introduced, which main instrument is accordion, as well as la guacharaca and la caja vallenata. This is a very typical type of music, and I would highly recommend artists like Carlos Vives to introduce you to this type of music. From this, then you can also have other types of music like paseo, merengue, puya, son, tambora, as well as porro. So this was a little bit of information about one of the most known regions of the country, especially if you want to visit, which is la Region Caribe. Next, I want you to introduce you to la Region Pacifica. It is not too long, even if it looks like it, it is actually quite easy. Now, as you can see, it goes all the way from the top, it actually touches the Caribbean Sea, goes down the full Pacific coast, also known as Litoral Pacifico, to the end where it touches with Ecuador. Now, this is a region that might be a little bit more unknown to the world, and that it is more easier for us Colombians to kind of be more obvious about it. That's why I wanted to put together both regions that touch the sea, so we can kind of add things that perhaps you already knew with some things that, hey, let's learn. So from the top, you have la región named Chocó, whose capital is Buenaventura. I actually visited Buenaventura a long time ago, and it was a very interesting travel because I was sick, so I don't actually remember that much. I do remember they was very pretty. And in particular, we visited one of the many islands that are on the coastline, which was called Ladrilleros. These are typical islands that during certain seasons are completely closed because the sea level rise, so you have the seasons in which you can actually visit. If you're interested in going there, check those. And in particular for the Pacific coast, I just wanted to add, as per usual, Chopki Town, one of my favorite groups from Colombia, whose name actually in part is Choc from the Chocó. Next one is Valle del Cauca, whose capital is Cali. And like I said in the previous video, a big part of my family is from there, and I love Cali. Cali is particularly known for the salsa. Of course, you know the music salsa, it's all the way in Latin America. However, the way in which it is danced, basically Cali got its name because they dance in a particular way. So you can search as salsa caleña. They get wild and I love it. Then we have Cauca, whose capital is Popayán. This is when you start to see one of the main resources of this zone, which is caña de azúcar, panela and café. And here, alongside the next department, we found what is known as Macizo Colombiano. Basically, it is this combination of areas between the coastline and La Cordillera Occidental, the Western Cordillera, that creates a very interesting and messy territory. Anyway, the last department is Nariño, whose capital is Pasto. Here you can find El Santuario de las Lajas, and on the coast, La Isla de la Carota. And in particular, we have the Carnaval de Negros y Blancos. So, from the top, Chocó, Buenaventura, Valle del Cauca, Cali, Cauca, Popayán, and Nariño, Pasto. Some interesting things about La Region Pacifica is in terms of humidity. It is one of the most humid places in the world. So, just to check it out, you have the coast, as you can see, and then you have the Andes. Plus, you have a lot of rivers there. This creates a very, very humid zone. But on the upside, this allows for a lot of biodiversity. This is a zone particularly known also for the animals, a lot of reptiles, birds, the jaguar. And this is a coastline when you can go visit the hump whales. And you find one of the most poisonous frogs in the world. In fact, many of these zones are protected by UNESCO. And here you can also find a lot of issues in regards of politics in terms of territories. Similar to the Caribbean region, there are a lot of indigenous groups whose main land was taken away a long time ago, or it wasn't exactly taken, but it was used by others instead of themselves. In most recent years, they have been fighting a little bit more for maintaining those territories. But here's the thing, and not to introduce a lot of politics into this whole video, however, I think it is important to note that even though the territories might belong to them, sometimes the country doesn't exactly help them. And in fact, one of the reasons why the Pacific coast is particularly not very well known is because they don't have a lot of resources. Like I stated, because of the geography, it can be a little bit hard to move in this area. You have to travel by bus or by car, and it might take a while. Having not a great transport can actually block the development of a place. And the fact that these territories are not held by the state in any other way means that they often have to hand for themselves. So even though they have a lot of resources, they sometimes can struggle a little bit. So yes, that was it. That was me introducing a little bit of my beautiful country, starting with the regions that I think were a little bit easier, mainly because one you probably maybe have known a little bit more about, aka the Caribbean coast, and then the Pacific, because given it's not too big, then it can add up to this video without making it too long. Hopefully you learned something or you found about something interesting. Out of all these places, which one would you like to visit? In any case, have a nice day. Bye bye!